Metastasize. Metastasis is a pathogenic agent spread from an initial or primary site to a different or secondary site. Of a cancer, the spread to other sites in the body is by metastasis. So metastasize means to spread to the rest of the body.
A number of times in throughout history, narrated or given to us in Scripture, God, who normally delegates the care of the earth, steps into history to stop sin because it's about to metastasize. One example is the Tower of Babel, or Babel, as our good friend Amir pronounces it. The Tower of Babel, the sin was beginning to metastasize, and God stepped in. Then, of course, we've got the flood of Noah. Sin was continually on everyone's minds, and sin only. And sin was beginning to metastasize, and the idea of it spreading beyond just the boundaries where it was developing. And then, of course, Sodom and Gomorrah. And so God steps in when sin metastasizes. Now, I think that sin is about to metastasize. Hey, this is Richard Myers here. Hey, thank you for joining me. Once again, I just wanted to do a short video. And basically the idea of this video is things are different now. One of the most dangerous things you can do as an investor, as a trader that's buying and selling, is say to yourself, things are different now. But let me demonstrate where I think actually that is true. For example, just quickly, when you go back to the middle of the 1400s, the 15th century, we had the invention of the printing press. And you could honestly say, as things went forward, that things are different now. They were substantially different because of the ability to communicate cheaply. And then, now in the early part of the 20th century, the 1930s, of course, Germany was being taken over by a person who won't be named. And he was consolidating his power and killing his enemies and disabling and heading toward the extermination of the Jews. And we could all say, looking back at that time, he was the Antichrist. If you were alive at that period of time, you'd say, this is it. The Antichrist is now on the scene. Even the third 1,000-year reign. And I'm trying to choose my words carefully so I don't get edited or censored. Even the 1,000-year reign he was wanting to present himself as a type of Christ. And so people could say, and then the world was at war. Japan was moving on the Chinese and taking over Southeast Asia and Indochina. The Germans were moving in Europe to take over, and literally the whole world was at war. And so you could easily say, boy, this is it. The end times are here. It's all over. Antichrist is now on the scene. However, as we learned, that wasn't the case. Everybody was wrong. And we entered from that period into one of the most prosperous, peaceful times that the earth, I believe, has ever known. And so now we're entering into a similar period, and it's interesting. It's just almost exactly 100 years since the last time. And the forces of evil are moving to to take over, to take over the world and subjugate us and to destroy Christianity and to destroy the Jews. And so it looks like as we're just going into another phase like we did 100 years ago. But I want to say to you, and this is my point in this video, things are different now. And let me explain why they're different. And it's based on one simple thing that you may not have thought of, and of course that's why I'm presenting it, and that is the Searchable Database. I was there in the 1960s and programming in a very rudimentary way, and we would try to construct a database. It was very clumsy and very time consuming. The computer had to go entry by entry, and the entries had to be perfect, and it took time. And from that period, 1960, to the present day, now you can go in and swipe your credit card, and artificial intelligence and searchable database systems will allow that number to be found within seconds, if not less than a second. I can't tell you what an incredible transformation this has brought about. The searchable database, it's a Google search, it's the Bing search, and it's the basis of artificial intelligence. What is the brain, if you will, of artificial intelligence? It's the searchable database. As over the last 20 or 30 years, we've taken virtually every book that exists, and we've scanned it into a database so that it's searchable. Every research project, every master's thesis, every doctoral thesis is scanned into a searchable database. And what this has done, it's reduced the time for innovation by at least 100-fold. And let me see if I can illustrate it with word processing, which was also a development that was parallel to this same time. When I started school in the 1950s and 60s, I took typing class with a mechanical typewriter, and I learned how to type. And my wife could type 100 words a minute on a mechanical typewriter. By the time we got into college and then seminary, we had an IBM Selectric, and it was so much faster and so much more efficient. It was unbelievable. And then, of course, later on, toward the end of my seminary, word processing started to emerge. And so what would take days, weeks, and longer, now you could do within a few minutes with word processing. So the efficiency of developing a worded document, a page, a letter, a report, was in the efficiency of doing it was increased tenfold, 100-fold, just by the development of word processing with spell checking. I mean, and now you can speak into the computer and it'll write it for you. And so you could write a book. It might take a year to write a book in 1960, 2 or 3 years maybe. You can do it in a few weeks here now with the word processing. Well, the same thing has happened, even with greater efficiency, with the searchable database. So innovation is accelerating at 100 times faster. So research projects. And so now, given the availability of searchable databases, engineers, scientists, and innovators can innovate at a speed that's 100 times faster than they could in 1960. Now, man being sinful, they're using this searchable database efficiency to develop sin, and I believe for sin to metastasize. They're already creating designer human beings in some quarters of the world. They've figured out, it's called CRISPR, how you can carry a DNA, a gene splice or a gene alteration into a cell through the insertion of a benign virus. And this has enabled gene therapy. It's enabled, and this kind of stuff is running at warp speed in laboratories around the world. And you, if you're not familiar with this technology, if you're not familiar with what's going on, if you're not keeping up, you're not aware of the incredible ability we have now to develop sin. And I believe that that's one thing. Things are different now because of the searchable database. And I believe it's the searchable database that's going to allow sin to metastasize. And I think bring about God stepping in to the scene and stopping what's happening. Hey, I hope this has been helpful. Something to think about. Some of you can carry this a little bit further, maybe, and develop it. Hey, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.